Hey, this is Raina Love. How you doing? Please like, share, and subscribe. It don't cost you nothing just to push the button, and I really appreciate it. I'll know that you came to see me. Well, I want to talk about growing up with a drug addicted father. I feel that this story needs to be told, maybe to help some other children in that same situation. I want to tell it from a child's eyes because I remember a lot of things from being a kid. So, this is going to be a series that I plan on sticking with. And my father passed a year, well, around Father's Day. And that was really hard for me. But here we go. So I think I want to start the story from when my father was awesome. He has always been a beautiful person, and his spirit was just magnetic. He's a very handsome man with natural curly hair, light skinned, 6'2". So he really had the whole world in his lap because of his magnetism and the way he looked. But somehow, Detroit's energy got to him. So even as a child, he gravitated to the ghetto. We came from money, generations of money, no slavery. My grandparents owned land, acres, uh, mansions. So my father really didn't have a reason to really gravitate to the things that he did. My grandmother and my grandfather were workers. My grandmother was a teacher, and my grandfather worked at the plant. And he had a lot of brothers and sisters, but he was very well taken care of. My grandmother was very traditional. So I feel so blessed that I had a chance to still grow up with a traditional grandmother who used doilies. She ironed my grandfather's underwear. That's how much I come from homemakers. And she was a teacher, but she did that part-time because her family was number one. So he comes from a good background, but he thought it was fun to go to the projects when he was younger. And he would tell me about it, how fun it was in the projects, and how he would hang out there, and he just really enjoyed the people there. And that's where he wanted to be. So he ended up getting in the service, and that like threw his mind off and damaged him like the service does to many of our beautiful men. And when he got home, I'm not going to tell his whole journey, but when he got home, eventually he met my mother, and she was in college, very pretty. She was a model and going to school and working at a ice cream shop, I believe, and she had an apartment. She had moved here from Alabama, Montgomery, Alabama, and she was just doing very well in life at the time because she was very educated, so college was really easy to her. So they were dating, and they ended up, she got pregnant with me, and they moved in together. Now, my mother did say that they were together for a while before my father, exhibited violent tendencies. And this was before he got on drugs. So the war had been affecting him, with him having to kill people for money. And, that messes with your psyche because if you're not a murderer, but you're doing it for money, that just really messes you up. So she said the first time he smacked her was after I was born, and I was in her arms, and she tried to break away from him, but she loved him, and she gave him another chance, like a lot of women do. And so the story kind of goes from there. So we end up moving into a upper flat on Wisconsin in Detroit. And I had my own room, and my father was working at the plant at the time. And so I was really spoiled. My room was like a little kid apartment. I had the full kitchen, mounds of teddy bears. Anything I wanted, I got. And it was kind of weird because I never really cared about things. So my dad was just, excuse me. My father would just buy me everything because I never was a needy kid. That's going to be a whole nother story on how I was born, awakened, using my third eye. But this is a story about my father. Jesus. Why you always cough when you got to talk? I was good all day. So we move in this upper flat. And his brother lives next door. His sister lived next door. Now, his brother, I believe, was already on drugs. And he was an alcoholic when we moved over there. And he was working at the plant as well. But I remember my mother going over there. I mean, my mother let me spend the night with my auntie because she lived with my uncle. And I drank a big cup of water, I thought. Like, I was crawling. I think at that time I was probably about 3. So I was walking around, saw a cup of water, and I drank it a little bit, and then I was choking, and I got sick. And my mother was really upset because, you know, if you're inside of an alcoholic's home, he's going to have vodka. He had straight vodka in a cup. It looked like water, no ice, nothing. So my mother started, you know, not letting me go over my uncle's house as much. And I would be at home. So my memories right now are a little choppy because I was 3. And so I'm trying to remember things. But I do remember that my dad spoiled me and loved me so much. And I feel so blessed that he fought his sickness for me and he never hurt me, never. So I remember seeing him, and this was the war. I remember us driving a car one day, and he had one of his violent outbursts for no reason. Even though my mother was a talker, she talked back a lot, she yelled a lot, she demeaned him a lot. So she kind of pushed him into that vibration of violence, you know. So I try to tell women the biggest power we got is to what? Shut up. I mean, oh my God, I see women talking too much. Shut up. If you were the king and he not good enough for you, move on. But shut up. You know, deal with it, grow with it, help him build, do something good for him. That's what I learned from being with a woman that had to learn who she was with and move within that if you're going to stay with them, you know? So she would talk, and we were in a car one day, and I was sitting in the back eating my McDonald's. And my dad got his outburst, throwing food out of the car, going all kind of ways. Oh my God, I'm like scared. I'm like, oh my God, I'm scared. Oh my God. Oh, I love my dad, but he used to do dumb things when he was drunk, okay? At that time, he was drinking a lot. So, you know, fast forward, because I really don't remember a lot at the upper flat. But I remember them partying all the time. Like, they would lock me in the room. They had parties all the time. It was the 70s, so parties all the time. And so my mother would just close my door. And again, my dad made sure I had anything imaginable a kid could even think of having. So they would lock me in a room with a bunch of candy and some food. And I would hear them out there partying, music and stuff. But I've always been a very self-absorbed person. And I think it was because I had to be to keep my happiness, you know. So I would block out a lot of things. You know, I learned that at an early age. You know, I may hear them fighting, tearing up the house. I'm in my room, I'm playing. I act like I don't even hear that because it was so frequently that I learned how to just block it out. So I did that with the parties too. I really don't know how wild they got. My mother always made sure that I never inhaled drugs, which was beautiful. She always kept that away from me. So I was aware that she smoked marijuana, but she never smoked it around me. So growing up in that 2-family flat was beautiful. at the same time, because that was in a time where black people were really still kind of united, you know. So the kids, we would play outside. I would go with the neighbors to Easter market and get fresh vegetables and fruit, and we would be eating that on the way home. And you know, so I got like a lot of good memories. You know, at the beginning of the stages when my father was just drinking a lot and trying to cope with the war constantly playing in his mind, you know. He would wake up in the middle of the night sometime and beat my mother. And the thing was that he didn't just beat her. It would be all night. I didn't even understand how he had so much energy. He would come home, I would say maybe about 6 or 7 o'clock, and I got where I could tell when he was just itching to get that energy out, you know, to beat my mom. It was weird. He just make up things to beat her, you know. So I just started knowing trigger stuff. So I would always try to spend the night out, cry when people want to send me back home, because I could tell that, you know, he got so drunk that you know, after this party he's gonna go home and beat her, you know, for hours. Sometimes the sun's coming up and he's still beating on her. I don't even know how she took that, because you see how little I am. My mother was like 105 pounds soaking wet. We're black and Filipino. We don't get big, we don't really age, you know. It is a blessing, but at the same time I used to feel so sorry for her. She had so many black eyes that she knew what to use, and bruises on her body, and she would lie to people at work, you know, because by the time we were getting ready to move into the house that they bought, I was 5. I was going on 5 years old, and my mother was working at Blue Cross Blue Shield at this time. And my father, from what I know, he had switched his job to Ford, and I think he still was working there when we moved into the house. So when we moved into the house, my godmother was very wealthy. She started a private school called Sleepy Hollow. So again, I'm being very spoiled, feeling rich. My father made sure my bedroom had the best of everything, canopies, desks. I mean, anything you could think of. My dad always spoiled me no matter what he was going through. I was his sanctuary of love, and I appreciate that, Dad. I know you right here listening to me talk about your story, because why I feared you, I loved you, and I just appreciated his love for me no matter what, you know? So he paid for me to go to private school, him and my mom. And because my godmother, it was her school, I was kind of the privileged kid at the private school, you know. And she went all out, and I woke up in the morning with uh, you know, eggs. When I got to school, our school had full-fledged breakfast like your mom's cooking in the kitchen. Eggs, pancakes, sausage, bacon, orange juice. I mean, everything. I'm just eating like, yes, I can't wait. I cannot be late to school for breakfast, because I was in latchkey in the morning and latchkey after school, because my parents worked all the time. So I remember when I got to private school, I was enjoying the food. My mother always cooked for me too. I mean, I was spoiled in the middle of hell. It's kind of weird, but in a sense of certain things, you know. So, excuse me. So I remember, I'm talking about the good times right now of when we first got to the house. My father hadn't yet got on drugs. He was just drinking a lot. So he was exercising. They ate really healthy. My mother cooked everything in a wok, okay? Everything. Popcorn, warmed up food. I mean, the wok is her life, you know? So she would be cooking fresh stir fries. We had a garden in the backyard. I lived across the street from the school, a public school. So my father would run around the track every day, and he would have me on his back. And when he would leave the house, I thought I could run, and he would make me feel like I'm, you know, winning, and like he was just an awesome dad. He really loved me. And so he still was beating my mother, but it kind of slowed down when we got to the house. it was a time where it was just good for maybe a year or two. He would only beat on her like maybe every 6 months or something. He still would beat her all night, but that would be when he just really, really went to drinking. He was fighting people on the street as well. And he still would wake up sometime in the middle of the night and beat her up. Um, out of her not helping him, one night I heard him say, "You didn't help me," when he woke up. And then he started beating her. So the war is real. Don't have your children go. I'm just saying. So I'm going to fast forward now to when my life changed. I was a prima ballerina. Oh, I didn't even say that part. I was being trained to be a prima ballerina. It's like the Olympics. I had a very strict teacher that my godmother had provided for me. And it was a part of the school, but the teacher, like I say, I was a privileged student there. So the teacher really worked with me, was very strict. I was the head ballerina all the time. Everybody looked at me to see what moves we do. What were we doing? I always been a princess and a queen ever since I was born. My first daddy girl dance, I went in a Rolls Royce. I remember it. I was 6 and it was all white with red interior because my godmother provided that for me. And when I got there, I felt so good because my mother always dressed me like a baby doll. My real name is Barbie, by the way. And so she always treated me like her little Barbie. My hair was naturally long. And you see I got these big eyes. So she always treated me like her little Barbie doll. At the same time, she was mean to me. My mother was mean to me a lot. I think that it was because of my father abusing her. She would in turn turn it on me because he loved me so much. He would hold my hand when we went places. He never hit me. He didn't even spank me, but he beat her so bad. So, that it really was a weird world for me to have a man that put me on a pedestal and loved me so much. He would buy me flowers. I've always got flowers from my father when he would go grocery shopping on Saturday. He would bring me flowers. He would bring my mother flowers too. And he would bring me like these candies that I didn't even appreciate. I mean, expensive candies. He would go to the really good candy shops and bring me all kind of exotic candies. And I grew up eating exotic fruits and things like that. And he wanted me to do tennis. So he used to take me to do tennis. But I was such a lazy kid. And so I didn't want to do tennis because you had to run and move. And I was very little for my age. So a lot of people always treated me like a baby, even up to like 11 years old because I was like so little. I was little mamas. So everybody treated me like a baby, picked me up all the time. So I never really had to do much, So I was just always treated like a princess. So when my father got on drugs, it was like my world changed overnight because my grandfather, I think that was my uncle that had the mansion on the east side. My auntie used to take me over there and I would be running through the mansion with my pretty dresses on. I mean, I didn't have reality of the hood because my parents, at first kept me around luxury and abundance and beauty, and I never wanted anything. I never really asked for anything. So again, my father would just buy everything, trying to please me, trying to get some rise out of me because I didn't really get excited over material things, So he used to try really hard to see me get excited, On Christmas, he would wake me up. I'd be asleep. I'm a little kid, like, oh my God, I'm trying to get some rest. You waking me up, Dad. Dang it. He would be so excited about Christmas, The whole living room would just be filled with toys. I mean, it was just beautiful. I was the only child, so I guess that was easy then. So when he got on drugs, everything kind of changed, and I stopped going to private school and they put me in public school, which was a very big shock for me. I'm sitting there and people pulling my hair. It's 40 kids in a class. We only had like 10 kids in our class with 2 teachers. I was an all A student in private school. I was a D student in public school, because when I got there I was scared. I didn't know these kids were not well behaved. The teacher was treating us bad and saying mean things to us. And so I didn't really talk because I was in shock. And I didn't really do my work because I was in shock. And I had just, what was an all A student? I mean, for real, I was. So it was so dramatic into this public school. And they would call me white girl somehow because I'm like, what is y'all? Oh my God, no. And you can have that. I used to give them my lunch because when I got to public school, I remember the first day, and my mom, she used to, like, when I was at private school, my godmother, she made hot meals for the kids. She had a chef in the kitchen that cooked like your mama. We had greens, cornbread, chicken, all kind of stuff for lunch. I mean, our lunches was like, ooh, you want to eat there, you know? So I'm getting to public school. My mother had to make me a lunch. And she finally learned that I was just not like sandwiches. Sandwiches is when you don't have nothing to eat. I mean, that might sound bougie, but I was used to eating hot meals. So it was hard for me. And cold bologna and the sandwich gets soggy. My mother finally learned that I didn't like your lunch. I told her I was giving it away. I was throwing it away. I didn't like food that sits in a thing. It was like I say, it was a shock to me. So my aunties would start bringing me lunch at lunchtime at the public school, which really was like helping me a lot, you know, to transition into this new way of living that really felt just bad because I was around children that just didn't look well kept now. I mean, public school was full of good kids and kids who had parents that didn't love them or didn't love themselves, so they didn't really care about how they sent their children to school. So the children are kind of a reflection of that. So it was a lot of violence at the public school, even though it was 5th grade. And the teacher, again, would have me go get the switch, or they called it Dr. Vader sometimes, because I was really quiet. I just didn't do my work, but I was quiet. They thought I was slow, but I'm thinking, oh, y'all slow. Oh my God, I hate it here. And I had already did the schoolwork that they did 2 years before. Like, oh my God, it was just weird that my grades went down when I was 2 years ahead of public school. So don't put your kids in that. You start, homeschooling. Get your kids really educated, because if your child cannot handle chaos, it's going to be a battlefield there. They actually had a kid shoot himself in the leg. That was middle school, bringing guns and stuff. And I'm in the midst of this. Well, we used to sing and hug at my school. I just wasn't used to it. And then on top of that, now my dad is on drugs, So now the house is changing. Everything used to be new and nice, and I was just feeling like abundant. But again, my father, I give it to him. No matter what, he was a hustler. And no matter what, he always spoiled me. So he ended up, I don't know how he stopped working at the plant, but he started driving cabs. And so, a cab is cash every day. So he would come home from work, and at that time when I was in public school, I lived across the street from the school. So I would go home for lunch because, again, my mother had been battling me to eat the lunch and I didn't want to. So I would come home as a little kid. I had a key, and I would warm my food up in the wok, whatever she cooked that day before. Eat good, my rice, my vegetables, whatever exotic meat she cooked, because my mother, they spoiled me with like the house, different things. So it was still kind of in that energy when I first got to public school, So we're going to continue. Please like, share, and subscribe.